The noted atheist Richard Dawkins has become an evocrat, and his worshipers don't like it. You may know Richard Dawkins. He is probably the most prominent atheist in our day. He despises religion and particularly attacks Christianity and has some very, very harsh things to say about Christians and Christianity. But what's interesting, he has a site in which he gets a tremendous amount of traffic. It's my understanding here, according to this particular article, that Dawkins has 85,000 online fans. And his particular website, where he deals with evolution and ethics and science and religion and so forth, gets a tremendous number of hits. And what's happened here is that atheists are outraged, and it's this particular article from the Times Online says is that atheists are losing faith in Dawkins as he censors his website. And so I'm looking at here that Richard Dawkins is an evocrat. We know what a theocrat is. A theocrat supposedly is somebody who takes their religion and enforces their particular view on people, censors things, keeps certain information out of the debate process. Well, there is no neutrality here. Everybody is really a theocrat. Everybody believes that there is an ultimate standard for their particular worldview, and that ultimate standard has religious connotations to it. Ultimately, you cannot prove that your worldview exists because the very thing that you use to prove your worldview, you have to prove that as well. You always have to come back to some governing principle that says that this is the absolute. The evolutionist who claims that reason is the basis of determining what is right or wrong, then how does one substantiate that reason is that foundation? One has to assume it to be true. So just like Richard Dawkins and his atheist friends despise theocrats, Dawkins has become an evocrat. That is, he has made evolution the foundational principle of his worldview, and now he is acting as somebody who is ultimately in charge here. I'm going to censor the website. I'm going to determine what's right and wrong on this website. Now, he has every right to do that. I'm not complaining at all that Richard Dawkins is doing what he's doing. It's his website. What's funny about all this is the atheists who are complaining about it. Look, if you don't like what Richard Dawkins is doing, get your own stinking website. Set it up the way that you want to do. But what's interesting about all of this is the reasoning that Richard Dawkins is using as to why he wants to govern or manage his website the way he wants. He says the split occurred after he announced that a discussion section on his website, considered one of the busiest online atheist forums, would in future be tightly moderated, and irrelevant postings and frivolous gossip would no longer be allowed. Hey, I'm all for that as well. Now, but what's interesting about this is that there is the moral connotation to this. Writing on richarddawkins.net yesterday in a posting entitled Outrage, so Richard Dawkins can be outraged about certain things. But please tell me, within the Richard Dawkins evocrat worldview, what is it that you can be outraged about? What is the standard to be outraged? He said that there was something rotten in internet culture and pledged to rid his website of its abusive element. But evolution is abusive. We got here by an abusive working of the survival of the fittest over a long period of time. The strong survived. They were abusive. The stronger biological entities overran, consumed, ran out of life, whatever you want to say about them, to get where they are today. It is by its very nature abusive. So here we find Richard Dawkins, the atheist, who supports evolution, says we got here by this way, now coming along and says we have to stop this abusive stuff. See, maybe the people on Richard Dawkins' website are being abusive to drive off the weaker elements. And Richard Dawkins is really doing a disservice to the evolutionary process, because over time the weaker elements will rise up and the stronger elements will be diminished. And that's exactly what Richard Dawkins is doing here. He's getting rid of the stronger elements, the more abusive elements. And so he is going to weaken his website as a result, which is very anti-evolution, counter-evolutionary. He says, imagine seeing your face described by an anonymous poster as a slack-jawed, turd-in-the-mouth mug, he wrote. Surely there has to be something wrong with people who can resort to such over-the-top language, overreacting so spectacularly to something so trivial. Wrong? What is the basis of wrong, Mr. Dawkins? I want to know where you determine, why you can determine something is wrong within your evolutionary worldview. You are borrowing from the Christian worldview. You are smuggling into the evolutionary world a basic ethical premise that you cannot account for in your own worldview. Now, I'm glad you were doing this, but now I want you to account for this given the basic assumption of your worldview. He goes on to say, even some of those with more temperate language are responding to the proposed changes in a way that is a little short of hysterical. The forum typically attracted 3,000 postings per day on subjects ranging from science to religion and ethics. Please tell me how to account for ethics given your worldview. What are you using to determine what some of these people are saying are wrong and they should be censored? Tell me where this comes from. Again, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm not saying that it won't make your website better. I want you to be able to account for it given the basic premise of your worldview. You cannot do so. This article says Dawkins denied that the forum was closing, but said it was being improved. The forum is going to be tightly controlled and will be under more central control, so it won't be available for anyone who wants to sound off freely, he said. I mean, this is such a joke. You are an evocrat, Mr. Dawkins. You are doing the very thing you accuse the religious people to do. You want central control. And you want central control over the things that you think are principally right. More power to you. Dawkins conceded that there was a good case for anonymity for some contributors, and such contributions will still be allowed. He says, I can see why people in America who lost their faith and do not want their families to know, or perhaps people of an Islamic background who have lost their faith to become Christian, have every reason to be anonymous, he said. Again, this is the problem with the Dawkins worldview. He cannot substantiate the basis for his moral worldview. I'm really glad that he is being inconsistent here, because once the inconsistency takes place, it becomes harder and harder to defend a naturalistic, materialistic, atheistic worldview over time. What you're beginning to see here, because with all the money that Richard Dawkins has made, now he needs ethics to protect the world that he has created for himself. And he knows that the standards in order to protect the world that he has created for himself with other people's money and the things that he has sold cannot be done if one is consistent with the basic premise of his worldview.
For more related to today's topic, check out The Deluded Atheist, a response to Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion. You will find it at AmericanVision.com.